Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 11:21. Weakness. Since light color Merskogen didn't gain his long lifespan from his Beyonder characteristic, Klein could only begin considering external factors. The effects of a mystical item? No, he doesn't have any mystical items on him. Aside from the Giant King's residence, there's nothing in the vicinity either. However, that's the sleeping ground of Dark Angel Sasser. Furthermore, the key is with me. I don't think Merskogen would dare or have the means to enter. Who took the key to the Giant King's residence after Sasser fell into a slumber? Isn't that a bit too wicked? Of course, the palace without the powers of a deity augmenting it wouldn't be able to trap a king of angels. Or perhaps, this key had long been transported to the northern continent during the migration of the giants. Sasser chose to sleep in the palace because, other than a small number of existences, no one can open the door and effect his sleep? Was Vice Admiral Iceberg's key given to me through a roundabout manner by the god of knowledge and wisdom? He wants to learn of Sasser's present state? If it's not the effects of a mystical item, what could it be? Time given by an angel from the Marauder pathway? Ignoring the possibility of giving stolen illusory items to someone else, there needs to be an angel, or a Grade 0 sealed artifact from the Marauder pathway. And there aren't any similar existences nearby. Back then, Merskogen was given a lifespan of thousands of years at once? Perhaps only a man is capable of doing that. Clearly, he wouldn't help Dark Angel Sasser. In addition, this blasphemer's true body seems to be wandering around the forsaken land of the gods. If there were angels or Grade 0 sealed artifacts of the Marauder pathway here, they might have become his food long ago. The cycle of fate? After light color Merskogen's natural death, everything begins with him guarding Sasser again? Yes, that's possible. If the current Merskogen is in an aged state, then it's completely understandable how so much time has passed. Furthermore, because the time in this loop seals centuries, it hasn't reached a node yet. It's only normal that I didn't manage to discover any signs above the gray fog in my haste. With this in mind, he quickly observed his surroundings to find traces of the Angel of Fate, Ouroboros. However, there was no remnant power like that. Klein quickly retracted his gaze and continued to observe light-color Merskogen's intense battle with Colin Iliad and the silver-armored knight Evil Spirit. His spirit body threads are normal, eliminating the possibility of him already becoming a marionette. Under true vision, his condition isn't abnormal. This means that he isn't a figure summoned from history. The divine kingdom of the Giant King's court is slowing down the passing of time or aging? The former can be eliminated because my spirituality is almost unable to support this observation now. This matches the amount of time the City of Silver's exploration team has spent in this area. There is a certain chance of the latter, with life progressing in the sunset state but being solidified during dusk. But the problem is that the ancient god, the Giant King, has already perished. Badhile, who wields the power of dawn and the power of dusk, has brought the divine kingdom to the astral world. It's impossible for this king's court to still have such a powerful influence remaining within it. Klein went through all the possibilities of extending one's life that he could think of, but none of them matched the situation of the leader of the court chasers. He had no choice but to consider another possibility, a secret art with a huge defect? This should be dependent on some kind of power in the Giant King's court. Otherwise, the range of Merskogen's activities wouldn't be so tiny. It wouldn't take until the City of Silver's expedition team arrived at the Giant King's residence before he took action. The entity related to life inside the Giant King's court clearly exists, the former goddess of harvest, the present Earth Mother, Giant Queen Omabella. As this thought flashed through his mind, he cast his gaze at the giant statues outside the palace. They were no different from the ones the City of Silver expedition team had encountered along the way. They were only slightly larger. However, after careful inspection, he noticed a small number of abnormalities. These giant statues had the aura of life, and they possessed a certain amount of spirituality. However, behind the mask, it was pitch black without any dark red glow. This Light Color Murskogen had used some sort of secret technique in the life domain to bind his spirit with the living statues. Using them, he obtained a long life, but this results in him being limited to such a tiny region and being unable to leave. This is very similar to the way evil spirits exist. This way, Murskogen might not be able to show his normal mythical creature form. Klein conjured a gold coin and flipped it up to make confirmation. When he received an affirmation, he raised the sea god's scepter high and prepared to remind Little Sun through the prayer light. At this moment, Demon Hunter Colin, who had avoided Murskogen's first attack, suddenly ducked and circled around him, running straight for the giant king's residence from the side. His gaze was locked onto those gigantic statues. In the intense battle just now, although the city of Silver Chief had always been at a disadvantage, he didn't give up on observing his surroundings, nor did he stop thinking. He was similarly puzzled as to why the leader of the court chasers could live for thousands of years. When he discovered that the living giant statues were only standing outside the palace without participating in the battle, he had arrived at a certain conclusion. He didn't know what exactly was going on, what principles underlay it, or what domain it belonged to, but his rich experience in exploration, and the intuition as a demon hunter, made him believe that the statues were the crux of the problem. Tap! 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 With two swords in his hands, Colin Iliad dashed forward, taking large strides. However, he didn't run in a straight line as he zigzagged his way forward. Upon seeing this scene, Light Color Murskogen let out an angry roar as he held the broadsword in his hands and rapidly slashed forward. His reaction proved that Colin Iliad's judgment was correct. Bang! 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 Demon Hunter Colin suddenly leaped away and did a roll. And above his original trajectory, silver light appeared out of thin air and exploded, forming a long snake. It completely lifted the solid ground of the king's court, tearing open a deep chasm. With a loud thud, Light Color Murskogen took a step forward. His nearly 5-meter-tall body bent and smashed the silver broadsword in his hand onto the ground. Clang! The area shook violently as the pillars snapped and fell into the orange cloud beneath. The ground between the two buildings exploded layer by layer, sending countless gravel flying. As for Demon Hunter Colin, he had already leaped up ahead of time and was in midair. He crossed his swords, creating an invisible barrier that blocked the rubble that resembled an arrow. At this moment, Murskogen, who had his back bent his knee and exerted strength into it. His massive body shot out like a meteor, instantly closing the distance between him and Demon Hunter Colin. During this process, the silver broadsword in his hands moved upwards. Seeing that Demon Hunter Colin was no longer able to dodge, a bright light suddenly shot over, accurately hitting Murskogen's broadsword. With a loud clang, Colin Iliad tumbled to the ground and finally approached the giant statues in one swift move. At the same time, he saw from the corner of his eye that the silver-armored knight phantom in front of Elder Lovia had long drawn out its giant sword. It had condensed the light of dawn into a huge bow as it shot out arrows consecutively. Light Color Murskogen's single eye had already been dyed with a layer of red. He didn't care about the arrows of light, and he allowed them to hit his body as they produced clanking sounds. He kept charging forward and brandished his broadsword, causing silver light to appear from different parts of the void. He chased after the giant-like Demon Hunter Colin, preventing him from attacking those giant statues. Suddenly, an arrow that was gathered from the lustrous brilliances tore past Murskogen and silently hit the gap of the visor of one of the statues. This was from the evil spirit that Shepherd Lovia grazed. Demon Hunter Colin was merely bait. It was the real attacker. Swoosh! 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 One arrow after another flew past, but this time, they were all blocked by Murskogen. But at that moment, the demon hunter had already positioned himself well. He aimed at the remaining giant statues and swung his two straight swords that were enveloped by the light of dawn. Light bloomed as a hurricane of light blanketed the area. With continuous cracking sounds, the statues collapsed to the ground. Meanwhile, the aura of the light color Murskogen rapidly declined. This King's Court chaser leader immediately roared, "Let's die together!" The silver broadsword in his hand exploded, splintering into countless fragments of light. They formed a terrifying storm that swept everything around them. The silver-armored knight, evil spirit, and demon hunter Collins simultaneously stabbed their swords into the ground, creating an invisible barrier. The dazzling white light swept between the two buildings, destroying the grayish-blue door and stone pillars behind Derek and company. However, when they swept into the giant king's residence, they failed to affect it completely. After an unknown period of time, just as Derek thought that the invisible barrier was about to be torn apart by the hurricane of light, the rays of light finally dimmed. In the ruins, the silver armor on the body of light-color Merskogan slowly faded away, revealing his grayish-blue body that was wearing linen clothes. Not far away from him, demon hunter Collins' body was covered in blood. He was transforming from a giant back to his normal state, but his aura was relatively stable. It was just that he had weakened greatly. With a clang, Merskogan genuflected as his flesh rapidly aged, decomposed, and evaporated. Under the orange light, he seemed to see the lively king's court once again. In the frozen dusk, giants came and went, playing the seven-stringed guitar or bone flute, wrestling, or enjoying the delicacies that they could eat at any time. The passing of their lives moved extremely slowly, and their king sat on a high throne, watching everything from above with a stately demeanor. After that incident, none of that existed, so he chose to follow Dark Angel Sasser. A smile appeared on Merskogan's face as he opened his mouth and softly shouted, "King!" This court chaser bowed his head, his flesh and blood completely evaporated, leaving behind a huge white skeleton and silvery white light that had condensed together.